Hi, everyone. Welcome to Both Sides of the Story. I'm your host, Alan Janae from CBS 4. Thanks for joining us. We continue our semifinal rounds tonight with the first debate from our winners bracket, and it is sure to be a great one. On tonight's show, students from Cherry Creek High School in Greenwood Village and Mountain Vista High School in Highlands Ranch compete for a spot in the winners bracket championship. So let's meet our participants now. First up is Masha Ososvkaya, a senior from Cherry Creek High School. Let's hear her story.
Hi, my name is Masha Ososvkaya. I go to Cherry Creek High School. I'm a senior. Debate just seemed like a really interesting class. I really wanted the opportunity to express what I had to say on a variety of issues, and I also wanted to gain public skills because I feel like that's really applicable in basically any field you go into. The most interesting topics for me are the ones that go beyond the U.S. and you can kind of look at them internationally. So for example, we had one on West African urbanization, and just because I hadn't been exposed to anything like that, I learned something new as I was preparing for it.
Masha is a phenomenal student, a kind, compassionate soul who's great at mentoring younger students. Masha does an excellent job of staying calm under pressure and is able to process multiple arguments. It really helps her to convey her ideas.
Outside of school and debate, I dance and I play the piano. I've been doing that for a really long time. I think for the future, I want to go into engineering, specifically biomedical engineering, because I find medicine really interesting in biology, and I want to make a difference in people's lives by creating new technologies and discovering new things to help the jobs of doctors easier.
That's Masha. Now meet Sahithi Mathukumilli, a junior from Mountain Vista High School in Highlands Ranch. Let's catch up with Sahithi.
As a kid, I was super shy, afraid to talk to people. So I found speech and debate and I was like, you know what, let's try it. And here I am, now super comfortable speaking in front of people. I'm Sahithi Mathukumilli and I go to Mountain Vista High School and I'm in 11th grade. Since I do want to go into healthcare, I hope that I can be that person where my patient feels super comfortable talking to me and that I can communicate clearly, concisely, in a way that's perceivable to my patient.
Combining Sahithi's ability to be so calm and poised and passionate, but with that organizational skill and that collaborative nature, I think that's one of the things she brings to a debate environment. So it takes away the aggression and leaves that real sense of a knowledgeable, experienced student.
I believe that taking a part in speech and debate is one of the most impactful things that you can ever do. And it'll improve your confidence, your speaking skills, and it's something that you can use to make change wherever you see that change needs to be made.
All right, now you've met two of the best speech and debate students in the state. Also joining us, our special panel of experts who will offer their analysis of our debate. They are Dominic Dezzutti, host of Colorado Inside Out, the weekly roundtable program here on PBS 12. He is joined by Kim O'Connor, co-director of the Young Writers Program at the Lighthouse Writers Workshop, and Marianne Goodland, chief legislative reporter with Colorado Politics. All right, time to set our ground rules. Each side will present their case. They'll ask each other questions and have a chance to offer rebuttals. Both students have prepared a pro and con case for tonight's debate, and they won't know which side they'll defend until we have a coin flip right here in the studio. When it's finished, we'll go to our illustrious panel for their questions. We'll find out whom they felt offered the best arguments. So let's get started. The issue up for debate is this. Addressing mental health in Colorado should be the highest priority in tackling the problem of homelessness. Let's have our coin flip right now, and we'll get underway. Sahithi, I'm going to let you make the call on the coin flip. Heads or tails?
Tails.
And it is heads. So I am afraid that we are going to let Masha make the pick right here. What would you like, affirmative or negative?
I'll take the affirmative.
Okay, affirmative means you go first. So Masha, as the proponent during this round, the floor is now yours for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I affirm that resolved, addressing mental health in Colorado should be the highest priority in tackling the problem of homelessness. My first point is that addressing mental health addresses the root cause of homelessness. Poor mental health is widespread. The Denver Post writes in 2016 that psychiatrists believe 65 to 70% experience mental illness. Tory 16 finds that mental illness was the third largest cause of homelessness for single adults. Bolosoria 20 corroborates this. There's clearly a link between psychiatric disorders and homelessness. mental illness preceded homelessness in about 2/3 of cases. Homelessness in turn has been associated with poor mental health outcomes. Prioritizing mental health is the only way to break the cycle between mental illness and homelessness. The impact has saved lives. Richie 19, Director of Communications at Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, finds that among those experiencing homelessness, 31% in Denver died from drug overdose. Drug overdose was the primary cause of death. Addressing mental health helps solve this issue, as the National Institute on Drug Abuse says that people who are addicted to drugs are also diagnosed with other mental disorders. We can significantly reduce these deaths by breaking this connection through mental health services. My second point is that other solutions are simply ineffective. Proposals to address the housing issue first do not work. E20 from the Manhattan Institute writes that there's no evidence-based proof of Housing First's ability to treat mental illness effectively or drug or alcohol addiction. Housing First is not a reliable solution. Westermeyer 13 discusses a study. The veterans in the housing program were re-addicted by the end of the 12 months after placement. Additionally, consider the danger of leaving someone with a mental illness alone in their new home. For instance, according to Better Health in 2020, people living with schizophrenia are more likely to harm themselves than they are to harm others. Other mental illnesses could also endanger the individual. Moreover, Housing First does nothing to reduce homelessness as a whole. Look to California, which implemented the model. E20 says that California's experience has been increased investment in permanent supportive housing and increased homelessness. Other regions have adopted this model, yet we haven't seen a significant reduction in homelessness. This is simply not the best approach for Colorado. My last point is that prioritizing mental health will reduce the cost of homelessness. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in 2021 writes that interventions to prevent homelessness are more cost-effective than addressing issues after someone is already homeless. Considering that mental illness is such a prevalent cause of homelessness, addressing it early on would significantly reduce its cost. Specifically on mental health, the County of Santa Barbara finds in 2011 that the cost of jailing homeless mentally ill individuals is greater than the cost of a planned and sustained effort that addresses their housing and mental health challenges. By redirecting money from prisons to mental health services, Colorado could reduce the cost of homelessness, decreasing the burden of taxpayers. Because prioritizing mental health saves lives while reducing costs, I urge you to vote affirmative.
Masha, thank you very much. Now, Sahithi, you have 2 minutes for any questions and cross-examination. Go right ahead.
Thank you for your speech. How would you suggest that we focus on mental health first? And what strategies do you suggest that we take to improve the lives of the homeless?
Well, I think investing in mental health services could definitely be a step in the right direction. I don't know if there's necessarily, this resolution doesn't necessarily have a specific plan, but we do need to be addressing the mental health first, because people with mental illness are not going to be able to move into housing if their basic needs of being healthy are not met first.
Thank you. And why do you say that mental health takes priority over finding shelter?
Well, for the reasons I mentioned, there's been studies and actual cases where cities like California and states have tried Housing First, and it clearly does not work. So that proves that mental health is a hindrance, and Housing First does not have the capability to improve mental health, just because that's lower on the hierarchy of needs than it is housing.
Thank you. And then do you have a rough estimate how much mental health finances would cost in comparison to housing or other alternatives?
I do not, but I do believe that housing is going to be more expensive. You're going to have to build those homes, whereas the mental health services already exist. You just have to redirect money from prisons to the mental health services.
All right, thank you.
All right, both sides of this story. We have Masha in the affirmative, Sahithi in the negative. 3 minutes right now to state your case opposed. Go right ahead.
When looking at the homeless population in Colorado, we should take note of the mental health struggles that exacerbate the conditions of the homeless, but our first priority should be to focus on finding a secure shelter for people to live in. I will agree, mental health is very important, but while people are dying of hunger and hypothermia on the streets, it's not fair to anyone to offer a therapist over a blanket and a meal. Rather than jumping in to solve mental health issues, we should first provide homeless individuals with safe environments and housing. Safety, food, water, and shelter are basic necessities that humans need to thrive, as expressed by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In order to begin a journey of improving mental health, people need to live in a place where they aren't fighting to survive. And at the heart of all of these discussions, we would all like to see the homeless population be in a healthy enough state where they can successfully be reintegrated into society and support themselves. If individuals have an environment that allows them to grow, they will have more access to mental health resources, which are on the second tier of the list of priorities. However, with creating a safe and livable condition for the homeless, a common concern is how much of a financial burden it will be on us. And we can look to the past to provide us with some guidance. In 2016, Denver wanted to see if providing permanent housing would help the homeless population that is seen in the city, and 8 private investors were willing to put in $8.6 million in upfront costs to house 250 people who had frequent interactions with the city's jail system. So far, they've seen between an 83 and 87% success rate in housing stability for the people who have participated in the 5-year program. Kathy Alderman, the Vice President of Communications for the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, explains that the goal of the project was to demonstrate that if you house these individuals, it's going to cost less than leaving them outside to constantly cycle through emergency systems such as detox, jails, and hospitals. Thus, the financial aspect of giving people a stable living situation, while high, will provide great benefits. Providing stable housing should be our highest priority for helping the homeless population of Colorado get back on their feet, allowing them to learn in an environment of safety and re-enter society with the knowledge that they can use to benefit themselves and others. Providing stable housing situations will provide a greater benefit than if we were to focus on mental health first. So I encourage us to focus on housing before anything else. Thank you.
Sahithi, thank you very much. And now, Masha, you have 2 minutes for questions and cross-examination to Sahithi. Go right ahead.
Thank you for your speech. So you said that we can provide a safe environment for these people who are experiencing homelessness. How is it going to be safe if they are at risk to themselves because of their mental illnesses?
Well, we can build a community environment. People being around people that can help support themselves and also be monitored by other individuals will help create a compassionate and a sort of community that they can use to lift each other up and make themselves better.
How are we creating a community if we're just giving homes to like the person that doesn't have one?
I said in my case that I believe housing is the first step that we should take. On top of that, I say that our second step should be to focus on providing those mental health resources, since I do think they are beneficial. But I think our first priority should be to provide a safe environment that people can thrive in.
So you're saying we do like housing first and then we focus on building a community?
Yes, but as I would like to reiterate, housing should be our first priority, not mental health.
What happens in that time period between when we give people housing and then we start creating a community? Don't you think they could, like, people with mental illnesses could endanger themselves between that time?
I think we could take preventative measures to ensure that that doesn't happen, as being under a sense of other people can hold people accountable, and it would provide a better environment than if they were to just stay out on the streets and stay in the status quo.
Then you also mentioned that in 2016 we had like these 8 investors that were willing to create housing. Who says that we're going to have these investors now in 2021?
I mean, I think people that are willing to help this cause will always be there to help this cause, and so it's a matter of finding the right people and finding people that are willing to support the cause.
All right, we'll have to wrap up the questions right there. Addressing mental health in Colorado should be the highest priority in tackling the problem of homelessness. In the affirmative, Masha. In the negative, Sahithi. Masha, you now have 2 minutes for a rebuttal. Go ahead.
So starting with my opponent's first point on addressing shelter as the first priority, remember the evidence I read you from, for example, E20 that says that in California, we have not been successful with housing first, and the study from Westermeyer that talks about how the individuals that were placed in a housing first trial were re-addicted to their drugs that they were on before. This proves that it does not work. Again, we cannot simply address the issue of shelter. We have to address mental health first. You cannot put a person in a home. They could be a danger to themselves, as I said earlier. And you're just, at that point, it's just counterproductive. You're not helping these people. Next, she talks about how we can provide a safe environment, but remember that that environment isn't going to be safe. Yes, they might be off the street, and yes, they could have access to all of these like basic necessities they need to survive. However, remember that mental illness is something that you shouldn't have to go through on your own, and that's what we are forcing these people experiencing homelessness to do. We are forcing them to live alone in a home where they could endanger themselves because of their mental illness. Now, she also talks about how permanent housing is affordable, and we had these 8 investors in 2016. Remember, this was in 2016. Nothing says that we will have these investors now. Building housing is very expensive. We're going to need to house every single person on the street, and that's going to end up costing more than investing in mental health services that already exist. It's simply a matter of redirecting money. Look to the County Santa Barbara, that evidence that I read you, and also the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, that all say that mental health is going to be a preventative measure and it's going to be cheaper. That's also going to keep people out of hospitals and out of using these emergency systems that my opponent talks about. That's an option. Housing simply isn't going to do that because it's unrealistic to invest so much money, $8.6 million into housing. We're going to have to start all over again. While mental health, we can continue. We have these services already. We just have to address and implement them to the homeless people that need this help. Remember that safety is their priority, and we're not going to achieve that with housing first. For these reasons, I urge you to vote in F.
Masha, Ososvkaya, Sahithi, Mathukumilli. Sahithi, now 3 minutes to respond and close. Go ahead.
All right, I would like to start with my opponent's first point with saying that housing should not be the first priority as compared to mental health. And I would just like to say that if people do not have a foundation to go off of, if they do not have a secure place to live in, they cannot simply just focus on their mental health. We have to put ourselves in their shoes and understand that their circumstance is very different from ours. While our first priority might be to improve our mental health to achieve a higher quality of life, theirs is simply not the same. They need that shelter because they don't have any sort of stability in their lives. If we are to provide that stability and along that path provide mental health resources in the future, which would encompass my opponent's plan, but making sure that plan is tackled second rather than first, I think we could provide a beneficial solution all around. I would also like to touch on the financial aspect that my opponent mentioned. Now, she says that she doesn't have a clear estimate of how much it's going to cost to implement these mental health resources, and I think that puts her case at a significant disadvantage. I have run the numbers and I know exactly how much it's going to cost. We have put in things before, and we can improve those systems that we've already laid the infrastructure for, and we have a greater probability of improving at this at a faster rate since we already do have an idea of what we are doing. Now, I would also like to come to my opponent's attack on my case of saying that people might not be willing to invest in this cause. Now, that study that I cited was from 2016, but I think with the amount of individuals that are living in dire situations, I think more people will be wanting to help. If there's any way that they can help make a difference in people's communities, they will want to do that. We see it all the time. People are going out to give these people food, blankets, putting together care packages that they can use to maybe make themselves a little bit more comfortable. And if people are willing to go out of their way to do that, why wouldn't people who have the funds to do so, why would they not support this cause?
Sahithi, thank you very much. And now, Masha, you finally have 1 minute for your close. Go ahead.
So I just like to start off by addressing some of the attacks my opponent brought up on my case. First, she talks about how we don't have a foundation if we're not focusing on housing first. However, remember those studies that I cited that shows that the foundation does nothing to actually improve mental health. That's why we should be addressing mental health first. Remember what I read you from the Denver Post about 65 to 70% of people experiencing homelessness have mental illness. Then she also talks about cost and how I don't have a specific number. While that's true, remember that her studies from 2016, the cost has likely gone up significantly. And remember, we're not going to necessarily have these investors. She talks about care blankets and how there are people that are willing to help, but care blankets aren't the same thing as housing. There aren't people on this, just regular people that are going to be willing to put in like $1 million into housing. This was just a specific study that at that point, yes, we had investment. And remember that treating mental illness is going to be cheaper than just what we have right now. Look to my third contention where I give you this evidence of how the cost has decreased. And for these reasons, I urge you to vote affirmative.
All right, there is our debate. And Dominic, this is why this is great. Without the politicians in here, we get facts and we get research and we get accurate statements and we have a fabulous argument going on. Take it away.
Alan, you're absolutely right, and I just want to compliment just at the start here both of our students taking on a very difficult topic that, as you mentioned, Alan, there are a lot of city and state officials that would love to tap into some of the wisdom mentioned on both sides today. Debaters, as you know, our job is not done, your job is not done. We'll be asking you a few questions. Kim, why don't we start with a question from Masha?
Okay. Masha, I have a colleague who's currently dealing with finding housing in Denver that's affordable for them, as well as dealing with a lot of anxiety and mental health issues. And this friend and colleague has shared with me that they really feel that they have to find somewhere to live before they can deal with any of their other challenges. How would you respond to my friend and colleague?
I completely understand. I think it also might necessarily vary from like person to person. You might have people that their mental illnesses are so extreme that they simply cannot be left alone in their home. And I think we need to be able to account for those situations where people are a danger to themselves, and leaving them alone is like the worst thing we could do for them. We need to address their mental issues first.
Marianne, your question for Masha.
Masha, good morning. You mentioned an idea of rerouting money from prisons to mental health services. Wouldn't that put greater strain on municipal, city, county, state budgets, as well as lead to an inconsistent rash of solutions on how to fund and address these problems?
I don't think we're necessarily going to take away all of the money from prisons. This is specifically, so what's happening with people experiencing homelessness right now is that they're just simply being put into prisons because we don't know how to deal with them. However, the Santa Barbara County talks about how we can take money that's being used to put these people into jails and prisons, and we can allocate that to mental health resources, and that will end up being cheaper in the long run because those people aren't going to have to come back for treatment, go to all of these like emergency room visits. It's just going to be a stable process of their recovery.
Sahithi, you're not off the hook. As you know, we go to you next. Kim, your question for Sahithi.
Sahithi, what would you say about the fact that sometimes the folks experiencing mental health issues can't remain in housing that they do find because of the severity of the mental health challenges?
I say we adjust to that situation and we find a place for them where they can adequately get the resources that they need to help themselves improve their life and make themselves better and improve their quality of life.
And Marianne, your question for Sahithi.
Hi, Sahithi. You want to put homeless people and make sure that they have stable housing, but there is a percentage of that homeless population that may be suffering from mental illness who won't go, who would prefer to live on the streets. How do you address their issues?
I'd say that we offer the option to support people through housing, but if they are asking for something else, then we do what we can to reach them where they are. There are people that are more comfortable where they are, and that is their decision ultimately. We are simply putting forth the option and putting forth the environment that they can use and utilize to make themselves, grow themselves into a better position to reintegrate into society and create a better life for themselves.
Students, you've both offered fantastic answers here. Alan, give us a moment here. City's been tackling this for decades. We need at least a couple seconds to figure out who is moving on to the championship round.
All right, I've got the coin over here if you want to flip it and do it that way, Dominic. That'll work out. Right now, that gives me a moment, by the way, to let you know what's going on as our panel decides. You know, this is part of our expanded season of Both Sides of the Story, and next week we'll continue our winners bracket semifinal round with students from George Washington High School, and we'll see who will join tonight's winner in the 2021 championship. You won't want to miss that one. All right, panel, let's have that decision. I'm fascinated by this one.
We really could have used a lot more time in this. I need to be sure that both of you know that it is a split decision. I think we could have probably debated for another half an hour of how it went, but it is our job to come up with a winner so someone can move on. Masha, we have decided that you will be moving on to the championship round. You offered, in our mind, sharp answers when it comes to the rebuttal and how you took care of your defense of your own case, and your cross-examination questions were sharp, but you both did a fantastic job. You made our jobs very difficult, and we congratulate both of you on a great debate.
Well, as you say, Dominic, a lot can be learned by those who are leading our state right now on the question of homelessness and mental health. Congratulations, Masha. You'll now go on to compete in the Winners Bracket Championship. That comes up on December 17th. And Sahithi, we will see you in the third place match. That's coming up on December 3rd. Now, you both gave our viewers a wonderful debate tonight. Both ought to be very proud. We're glad to have you here. So that's all the time we have for our program tonight. I want to thank our excellent students and our esteemed judging panel who had the tough job of deciding. I want to thank you for tuning in. It is the support of viewers like you and our sponsors that helps to make this show a reality. You can catch up on past episodes of this program on pbs12.org, and you can catch me on CBS4 for all of the latest news and information impacting Colorado. For everyone here at PBS 12, I'm Alan Janae. Thanks for watching, and that is Both Sides of the Story.